Let us pray. Lord, nothing in my hand I bring. Simply to thy cross I cling. Amen. Of all the spectacular sights to be seen at Disney World's Epcot Center, the one I love the best is the American adventure. I never experienced that stunning portrayal of our American ideals without rejoicing all over again that I am so blessed to live in this great and free land. The American Adventure has a lovely tune as part of its program. It's a tune which frequently I find myself humming, and yet I actually believe that the words of the song are even more beautiful than the tune. America, spread your golden wings. Sail on freedom's wind across the sky. Great bird with your golden dream, flying high. America, flying high. What a glorious image of this nation. Like some great golden eagle soaring free and flying high. Both the image and the song remind me of the rather pointed words Paul delivered to the people who were citizens in the city of Galatia. Words delivered centuries ago. Words which, a couple of hundred years ago, actually became the foundation stone for those who gathered together to create this nation of ours. For there in Galatians, Paul says, "For freedom Christ has set us free." You are called to freedom, sisters and brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love, become servants of one another. Incredible words. And I believe that if we could recapture the meaning of the message of those words, just as those who founded this nation caught the meaning of those words, that we would be able to keep America soaring free and flying high. For freedom, Christ has set us free. That freedom requires courage. The ancients used to say that courage is the first of all the virtues. They were right. Courage is the first of all virtues. For example, honesty is a noble virtue, yes. But honesty is never really tested until there is the courage to speak and to live the truth. Love is a noble virtue, but love is never really demonstrated until there is the courage to love what the rest of the world hates. And of course, we would never know the virtue of freedom as it exists in this country today were it not for the courage of those who founded this nation. They were people of great courage. I think of John Witherspoon. He was a Presbyterian minister. When he picked up his pen and began to sign his name to the Declaration of Independence, he was putting at risk not only his calling, but also his life. And yet listen to what he said on that occasion. John Witherspoon said, "These gray hairs of mine must soon descend into the grave, but I would far rather they descend there by the executioner's hand than to desert in this hour of crisis the sacred cause of my country." Courage. Or I think of John Adams, who addressed the assembly and said, "All I am, all I have, all I ever hope for in life, I stake upon the sacred cause of this country." Courage. There were people of courage, all 56 of those who signed the Declaration of Independence. You see, the very moment that they signed their names, they were then charged as traitors against the crown. They concluded that marvelous document by saying, "We pledge to one another our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor." All of them paid a heavy price for what they did. Some paid the ultimate price. We pledge to one another our lives. Do you realize that 14 of those who signed the Declaration later were tortured and or killed because their names appeared there? We pledge our fortunes. Do you know that 15 other signers of the Declaration wound up by one way or another having stripped from them everything they possessed on this earth simply because they put their names right there? We pledge our sacred honor. While some lost their lives and many lost all they had, not a single one of them lost sacred honor. For there is no evidence anywhere that even a single one of the 56 ever once recanted that to which they had signed their names. Freedom requires courage. Do you know that the word courage appears in the Bible 365 times, once for each day of the year? I think that is no accident. We are to courageously pursue freedom every single day. Paul says, "You were called to freedom, sisters and brothers." You were called to freedom. Freedom requires courage. You see, it is only when we expend courage, even blood as courage, it is only then that we begin to understand and appreciate the priceless value of true freedom. We must pray for freedom, work for freedom, struggle for freedom, sacrifice for freedom, and yes, God help us, even fight for freedom should that ever be necessary. Freedom requires courage. The color of courage is red, blood red. America's Star-Spangled Banner includes the color red, a reminder to us that the freedom for which Christ has set us free is a freedom which requires courage. And that freedom also requires purity. Paul said to the Galatians, "You are called to freedom, sisters and brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence." That's a word we need to hear in this country today. One of the most horrifying stories to come out of the Vietnam War concerned what were known as tiger cages. The Viet Cong, because they were constantly moving through the jungle, whenever they would capture one of our soldiers, they would place that soldier in a tiger cage so that they could then carry that soldier quickly and easily through the jungle. Understand, please, the tiger cages were made of bamboo. They were 5 feet long, 3 feet wide, 3 feet high. Our soldiers could not even stretch out in them. And yet we know, for example, of one instance at least where one of our soldiers was kept confined in a tiger cage for 6 years. How hideous to think of being so cramped, so confined, so contained for so long. And yet I think maybe just as hideous is to realize that so many Americans today are wearing tiger cages on their minds. They are bound, confined, cramped, contained, enclosed, imprisoned, enslaved by their own selfish desires. They are giving themselves to the pursuit of that which is wrong and impure and degrading and destructive. And as a result of that, Patrick Henry's great and noble cry, "Give me liberty or give me death," has been shortened in our time so that we hear, "Give me." We have become a nation of people who have forgotten that freedom is not the license to do as we please, rather it is the liberty to do as we ought. We have become a nation where anything goes, forgetting that in a nation where anything goes, soon everything is gone. Just one example. You know how I love trying to find movies and books to recommend for you, your pleasure and your growth. Not easy to do that these days. Did you see in the USA Today just this last week the article which says that in spite of the national debate, that more and more movies are being brought to the screen which utilize crude, over-the-top humor and rampant immorality in order to build an audience, particularly among the young? Just a couple of nights or so ago on the evening news, I saw a report by the television reporter Erin Hayes in which she focused on the cartoon movie South Park, which has just been released, and that movie is actually being marketed to kids. And Erin Hayes, the television reporter, said, "The content of that movie is so horrible as to defy description. You would be a fool to let a child or a young person see it." Good for her. Let me weigh in with an opinion of my own. The movie Big Daddy is rated PG-13 and is being touted as a family film. Let me tell you, it is garbage. In the beginning, at the end, and in between, it trashes everything decent and virtuous in life. You wouldn't be very smart to let a child see it. Just one example of the fact that we as a nation seem to be becoming insensitive to that which is wrong and impure and degrading and destructive. And therefore I call us today to recapture a sense of longing for life's decencies which have been smothered by a philosophy of anything goes. I call us today, if we're adults, to be reading books like Tom Brokaw's The Greatest Generation, or if we're children, to be reading books like William Bennett's Children's Book of Virtues. I call us today to unite our hearts and our voices in saying, we have had enough of cleverness without wisdom, brilliance without values, liberty without responsibilities, power without integrity. We are called to freedom, sisters and brothers. We must not use that freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence. God is calling us to live a better way, His way. He is calling us to pursue that which is pure and righteous in life. You know that the color which stands for purity is the color white. America's Star-Spangled Banner includes the color white, reminding us that the freedom for which Christ has set us free requires purity. And that freedom requires compassion. Paul says, sisters and brothers, you were called to freedom. Only do not let your freedom be an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love become servants to one another. Do you understand that in the biblical sense and in the origins of this nation, freedom meant that we are to be compassionate and caring toward one another? That's the way we actually started out in this country. Along the way, we seem to have lost some of that sense of compassion. I think I know why. There are some Americans today who call themselves libertarians. They believe in the primacy of liberty. The only equality they believe in is the equality of opportunity. They do believe that everyone ought to have an equal chance. However, regardless of what happens after that, regardless of individual ability or the lack of it, regardless if some people get too much at the expense of others, regardless of anything like that, they say to those who are down and have no hope of getting up, tough luck, the devil take the hindmost. That's the libertarian spirit. And then there are some Americans who call themselves egalitarians. They believe in the primacy of equality. They believe that everyone ought to be absolutely equal, and so therefore they are willing to take whatever they have to take from anyone from whom they have to take it in order to be sure that everyone has absolutely the same thing. That's the egalitarian spirit. There are many Americans today who are influenced, consciously or unconsciously, by one or both of those points of view. But the fact of the matter is, the spirit of America is not libertarian or egalitarian, and it never has been. The spirit of America is something different. The spirit of America is a freedom that in essence calls us to a deep sense of compassion. When the Declaration of Independence came together, the words blazed across human history, all men are created equal. Do you understand that those who signed the Declaration did not mean by those words, I am as good as you are, therefore I will not do anything to help you? That's the libertarian spirit. And they did not mean by those words, I am as good as you are, and therefore I must have everything that you have. That's the egalitarian spirit. No, when they signed their names to those glorious words, what they meant was exactly the opposite. You are as good as I am, and therefore, what can we do together? Do you understand that the true spirit of America has never been, what do you owe me? What can I get from you? What do you have that I want? No. The true spirit of America has always been, how can I help you? What hurts you hurts me. Together we can overcome. That is the spirit of compassion. Freedom requires compassion. Do you know that the color chosen to represent compassion is the color blue? America's Star-Spangled Banner includes the color blue, reminding us that the freedom for which Christ has set us free requires compassion. The red of courage, the white of purity, the blue of compassion. You, sisters and brothers, are called to that kind of freedom. I love America. I do not disparage those who live in other nations, not for a single moment, but I do love America. I glory in her history. I exult in her freedom. I am wounded by her failures. I am troubled by her occasional blindness, but I love America. I thrill to read the stories of her great heroes. I marvel at reading her Constitution and her Bill of Rights, and I salute her attempt to make them work for all her people. I love America. I'm moved to tears when I sing her songs, when I see her flag, when I speak of her spirit, when I pray for her people. I love America. For America testifies to the truth that the more a nation depends on the greatness of God, the more the greatness of that nation shall be revealed. That's the way it was on the 4th of July. May it be so again. Pray with me, please. For freedom, Christ has set us free. Great God, you have called us to freedom. That freedom requires the red of courage, the white of purity, the blue of compassion. May we, in this land, in this time, capture the true meaning of true freedom through Jesus Christ. Amen.